hard and Bronze Star. Earned him in the Army, got orders and he execute. Graduated NYU, and that was back in 1957. Then he went to St. John's and became a legal weapon. Alright, let's speed it up to 1971. Congressional District, Charlie Ringle, here he come. Time to talk about the good that he done. Go housing them coming up.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, fans of that song presumably drove Charlie Rangel to victory in his district. Can I just point out that we have a broad culture gap in this country? I want to contrast two songs really quickly. Okay, two campaign songs really quickly. Here's Charlie Rangel's campaign song, right? Just a little more taste of this wonder and joy from Charlie Rangel's campaign.
Medicare, yeah. If you gonna vote for the Rangel. Charlie Rangel. If you gonna vote.
They're saying if you are going to vote, go vote for the Rangel. But it sounds like if you go vote for the Rangel. Alanis Morissette is the other song. She wrote this song for Marianne Williams. If you can't tell, Marianne Williamson over in a California district that is largely white. And this sounded like that.
Unless we start a revolution, awaken from this frozen.
So we got the folks who are in Charlie Rangel's district.
Today,
and then we got the folks who drive Prius over in Marianne Williams. Is it fair to say that the country may be splitting apart along cultural lines? Is it fair to say that? Just a possibility? So, that's a... what can you say? What can you say other than, if you're going to vote for the Rangel?
I don't know about y'all, man, but I'm turning all the way up right now. We vote for Charles.
Sometimes, honest to God, sometimes I hate politics. Well, meanwhile, speaking of politics that you love to hate, over at Seattle City Light, they have a continuing problem. It turns out that Jorge Carrasco, you know, the guy we just gave a $60,000 raise, he will be earning $364,000. Well, sorry, earning is a bit of a strong word. He will be signing the backs of checks for $364,000. Turns out that Seattle City Light gave almost $18,000 to a consulting firm called Brand.com. It was supposed to up the brand of Seattle City Light. Only one problem. Virtually the entire budget was geared toward exalting Jorge Carrasco. There's a shock. Seattle City Light's work with consulting firm Brand.com was geared heavily toward exalting the reputation of utility CEO Jorge Carrasco, according to newly released records. In an email last week to the city council and Mayor Murray, according to the Seattle Times, Carrasco objected to news coverage about the contract, saying that City Light, quote, did contract with Brand.com to enhance Seattle City Light's online presence, not mine. However, emails and other internal documents, now released to the Seattle Times, show that Brand.com placed an obsessive focus on sanitizing Google search results about Jorge Carrasco. In other words, we spent $18,000 to boost this guy's reputation, then gave him a $60,000 raise. And as we reported yesterday, we did all of that after he gave away $120,000 in scrap metal to two con artists. Carrasco especially wanted to get rid of any results from a Seattle Weekly article from 2008. It kept popping up in search results. As late as last month, according to the Times, Carrasco and a top aide were exploring whether they could get the piece expunged from Google entirely, which of course they cannot. Carrasco's top deputy has finally acknowledged in an interview this week that they probably shouldn't have done this. Probably it was a waste of time and effort. This didn't deliver the results we intended, said Sapphire Hamilton, chief of staff for City Light, who oversaw the utility's work with Brand.com. I would not recommend this service to anyone. Note to Mr. Hamilton. You selected it. Where was the bidding? And why exactly was your chief focus on protecting Jorge Carrasco from articles critical of him? Why not focus on Seattle City Light? If you're going to do a PR campaign, first of all, I don't think we should ever be paying for PR campaigns on behalf of government agencies. I don't. If you want help from a government agency, you got a phone book. Enjoy. I don't understand why we should be dedicating literally millions and millions and millions of dollars to a government agency and then pay more millions of dollars so that people can take advantage of the services provided by that government agency. But leave that aside. Leave aside the general objection. If you are going to do a public relations campaign, if you feel that is necessary, then do you think that it might be worthwhile to, I don't know, boost the brand as opposed to the CEO? In an email to CityLight, a brand.com representative said that the articles in question had been posted on sites that were avoided by Google and therefore were taken down. CityLight hired brand.com late last year as part of a larger strategy to promote itself as, quote, the nation's greenest utility. That public relations plan included billboards and new logos on the CityLight vehicles. Unlike those efforts, the work at brand.com centered on Carrasco. So, in the last couple of days, we found out a couple of things about Jorge Carrasco. One, the dude pulls down a bucket load. Two, he's happy to give away city resources to con artists. And three, he's happy to give away city resources to clean up the fact that he's really incompetent. Let's sign that dude a $364,000 check, shall we? As we continue here on the Ben Shapiro Show. Well, the old canard sort of goes that everybody in Hollywood is radically leftist. And it's not a total canard. There's some truth to it. But there are a few people in Hollywood who are not. Gary Oldman is one of them. You remember Gary Oldman? He plays Commissioner Gordon in all the Batman movies. He was recently nominated for an Oscar for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He's long been one of Hollywood's best actors. He's a terrific actor. He hails, I think, originally from Britain. He did an interview with Playboy in which he said a lot that is true and a couple of things that are very controversial and one that is quasi-false. The part that's true is where he railed against Hollywood's political correctness. He said, quote, well, if I called Nancy Pelosi a blank, and I'll go one better, a blanking useless blank, I can't really say that. But Bill Maher and Jon Stewart can, and nobody's going to stop them from working because of it. Bill Maher could call someone a blank and get away with it. He said to Seth MacFarlane this year, I thought you were going to do the Oscars again. Instead, they got a lesbian. He can say something like that. Is that more or less offensive than Alec Baldwin saying to someone in the street, you blank? I don't get it. And obviously, he's ripping political correctness, but the portion of the interview that has been getting all the attention is a portion that is highlighted by, of course, leftist website Salon.com, which is very angry at Gary Oldman because he says he likes Charles Krauthammer and thinks President Obama is terrible at his job. Oldman said in the interview, quote, Mel Gibson is in a town that's run by Jews, and he said the wrong thing because he's actually bitten the hand that I guess has fed him, and doesn't need to feed him anymore because he's got enough dough. He's like an outcast, a leper, you know? But some Jewish guy in his office somewhere hasn't turned and said, that blanking Kraut or blank those Germans, whatever it is, we all hide and try to be so politically correct. That's what gets me. Now, he's getting raked over the coals because of the phrase that the town is run by Jews. But the reality is that Hollywood is disproportionately Jewish. It is. There are a disproportionate number of Jews in positions of power in Hollywood. Now, it is worth noting here, that doesn't mean that the town is quote-unquote run by Jews, because that sort of implies that there's a common cause among the Jews in Hollywood, which is certainly not true. If there is a common cause among the Jews in Hollywood, it's the exact same common cause as among the non-Jews in Hollywood. Namely, they're very far to the left. All the folks who head up the system in Hollywood are people of the left. The Jews in Hollywood have nothing to do with Judaism. They don't care about Israel. They don't care about Judaism. In fact, they think that the Bible is a nasty document. I assume that some of the Jews who didn't like Mel Gibson's comments about Jews, and Mel Gibson did say anti-Semitic things. Okay, he did. But as an Orthodox Jew, let me tell you, that was mostly an excuse. That was mostly an excuse to oust him from Hollywood over Passion of the Christ by people who really don't care about him saying nasty things about Jews because they're not really Jewish. Meaning that they don't participate in anything Jewish. They take off half a day for Yom Kippur before they break for lunch with a ham sandwich. So for them to suddenly stand on the Jewish high horse is a little bit ridiculous. If anybody's going to stand on the Jewish high horse, it should be me, it should be Michael Medved. And I think Michael would agree with the concept that Mel Gibson is an anti-Semite, or at least has stated very anti-Semitic things. But the idea that Gary Oldman is, because he said that Jews in Hollywood went after Gibson, that's technically true. It's technically true, although it is missing the larger point, which is that the left in Hollywood went after Mel Gibson because they didn't like Passion of the Christ because it was a religious film. Playboy asked Oldman if he was a bigot because of his remarks. And Oldman said, no, but I'm defending all the wrong people. I'm saying Mel's all right, Alec's a good guy, so how do I come across angry? It's dishonesty that frustrates me most. I can't bear double standards. It gets under my skin more than anything. Now, Oldman has apologized for his comments. He's released a statement. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, condemned Oldman. And I got to say this. The ADL is one of the most useless organizations on planet Earth. It's run by Abe Foxman, and it is a joke of an organization. It never attacks anybody on the left for anything anti-Semitic that is said on the left. The ADL came out and said that when the Metropolitan Opera ran The Death of Klinghoffer, which is an opera that they're going to be running this fall, and the ADL said they were okay with that. Okay, The Death of Klinghoffer is a radically anti-Israel, anti-Semitic piece about how Palestinian terrorists were justified in murdering a wheelchair-bound Jewish American and throwing him off the ship, the Achille Lauro, back in the 1970s. The ADL was okay with that, but the ADL is fighting mad about Gary Oldman because, after all, it's easier to rip on Gary Oldman than it is to rip on the Met. Nonetheless, Gary Oldman has now released an apology, which I think is well taken, that says, quote, I am deeply remorseful that comments I made recently in the Playboy interview were offensive to many Jewish people. Upon reading my comments in print, I see how insensitive they may be and how they may indeed contribute to the furtherance of a false stereotype. Anything that contributes to this stereotype is unacceptable, including my own words on the matter. If during the interview I'd been asked to elaborate on this point, I would have pointed out that I had just finished reading Neil Gabler's superb book about Jews in Hollywood, An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. The fact is that our business, and my own career specifically, owes an enormous debt to that contribution. In other words, yes, Jews have had a disproportionate share in forming, creating, and running Hollywood. That's real. I hope you will know that this apology is heartfelt, genuine, and that I have an enormous personal affinity for the Jewish people in general, and those specifically in my life. The Jewish people persecuted through the ages are the first to hear God's voice and surely are the chosen people. I would like to sign off with Shalom Aleichem, but under the circumstances, perhaps today I lose the right to use that phrase, so I will wish you all peace, Gary Oldman. The ADL naturally has refused to accept the apology because that's who they are. They make more money if they refuse to accept the apology. Now, I'm not a politically correct person, so I've said repeatedly in this segment, and I'll constantly say, that Jews are ethnically disproportionately represented in Hollywood. The problem with Oldman's comments is not that. The comments is the suggestion that Jews have some sort of conspiratorial common cause against people like Mel Gibson. No, leftists have a conspiratorial common cause against people like Mel Gibson. If he had said that, he'd be completely right, and my guess is that that's actually what Oldman meant to say. The folks over at Deadline Hollywood, Mike Fleming Jr., for example, is defending Oldman because he's saying, look, it's a 7,000-word profile. He said something that was poorly worded. Are we going to end the guy's career over it? He said, all this for one imperfectly worded answer in 9 hours of interview time? Doug Urbanski, who is his manager and producing partner, and who emailed me this morning as well, he said, I want to respond to the misleading headlines that have popped up. By that I mean Gary does not blast quote-unquote liberal Hollywood. The word liberal is not used by him, nor